Today, we are diving deep into the declassified and leaked papers of a man who is working right at the crossroads of neuroscience, warfare, and artificial intelligence. This is a guy who claimed he could not only read your mind, but he could write to it too. Let's get into the absolutely wild world of John Norseen.
Let's just start with Norseen's own words, because, wow. This quote isn't just some catchy line, it's a full-on mission statement. It frames everything he did not as some kind of philosophical thought experiment, but as a direct order for military dominance in a future he believed would be run by what he called synthetic sentient species.
And there it is, the central, almost unbelievable claim that started it all. And you gotta remember, this wasn't some fringe theorist posting on the internet. This was a senior weapons designer at Lockheed Martin, one of the biggest defense contractors on the planet working on classified government programs. The implications of that are just staggering.
So who was this man at the center of it all? Let's take a closer look at John Norseen himself. Okay, so Norseen had some serious credentials. He was a former U.S. Navy intelligence officer, and his thesis at the Naval War College was all about applying neuroscience to counter terrorism. From there, he goes to Lockheed Martin, and that's where his research into neuroweapons really took off. This was high-level, state-sponsored stuff.
This quote just lays it all out there, doesn't it? He's revealing exactly how direct he believed this capability was. We're not talking about subliminal messages and commercials here. He is talking about using extremely low frequency, or ELF, radiation to literally ping your brain and trigger specific thoughts. Basically, to steer your mind down a path you didn't even choose. But how could this possibly work? I mean, it sounds like something straight out of science fiction. To even begin to understand Norseen's claims, we have to dig into his core concept, a process that he called biofusion. Biofusion is the Rosetta Stone for this entire field. The whole idea is that every single thought, every mental process you have gives off a unique biological and electromagnetic signature. Biofusion is the method of capturing that signature and translating it into pure math, a language that computers can actually understand and process. All right, let's break this down. First, you treat a thought as a semiotic. It's a term from linguistics, and it just means a sign or a symbol. Each one has its own distinct energy pattern. Second, you use a bunch of different sensors, like EEGs, fMRIs, you name it, to detect these patterns and fuse all that data together. And third, you map all of this information onto something called a Krylov-space, which is basically a fancy multi-dimensional graph where your thoughts can be plotted out and analyzed. And Norseen had this great fishbowl analogy to explain the goal. He said with this technology, you could literally watch a thought form in the deepest, most subconscious parts of the mind, what he called the Marianas Trench of human thought. And then you could track it as it bubbles all the way up to your conscious awareness.
You know, tracking thoughts is one thing. That's already pretty mind-blowing. But Norseen's work didn't stop there. It was all building towards something far more active, and frankly, far more terrifying: the ability to control.
So this is the really crucial part. If you can read a thought's mathematical signature, its brain print, then you can create its inverse. You can then broadcast that inverse signal back into someone's brain. And here's the kicker: the brain gets fooled. It just accepts this external signal as a totally authentic, internally generated thought or memory. To really grasp how much of a game changer this is, you have to compare it to the classic military doctrine of reflexive control. So the old way was all about feeding your opponent bad information, tricking them into voluntarily making a bad decision. But Norseen's method, it just bypasses free will entirely. The target isn't tricked. Their whole decision-making process is hijacked at a biological level. The choice becomes involuntary, maybe even unconscious. This diagram here, this shows you that classic model. You figure out what the red adversary wants, and you use your blue forces to manipulate the situation so they make the best reflexive decision for you. It's a big psychological chess game. Norseen, well, he wanted to just reach across the board and move the other guy's pieces for them. But this incredible technology wasn't just about manipulating human enemies. For John Norseen, that was only a stepping stone. His ultimate ambition was something straight out of a sci-fi novel. Yeah, you heard that right. He truly believed that by fully decoding the mathematics of consciousness, he could actually replicate it. He wasn't just building a weapon, he was laying the groundwork for a new, artificial form of life that he thought could one day come to dominate Earth. This slide shows a concept from one of Norseen's colleagues, a guy named Ed Nizawa, called the Peircean Single Warrior Model. And just look at the flow here: environment, Data gathering, self-control, action control, and then, finally, weapons. It's a blueprint for a fully autonomous weapons system, a closed-loop management system that observes, decides, and acts with zero human input.
And that is the fundamental question, isn't it? When you automate warfare to this degree, when you create a machine that can think and fight all on its own, what are the consequences? The scary thing is, Norseen wasn't just asking the question. He was actively trying to build the answer.
And he got a plan, a literal plan. At a conference in 2000, in Moscow, of all places, he presented what he called the 12 sentient values, which was basically his step-by-step guide for building a sentient machine from scratch.
The first 6 values are the foundation, the building blocks. A machine has to be able to identify objects, to move, to understand direction, and to measure its environment. But what's really crucial here is that he also includes the need for resources and the anxiety that comes with finding them, plus basic emotions. These are the building blocks of awareness.
But then it gets so much more complex. He moves on to biofusion as the actual spark of consciousness itself, the ability to daydream, to be creative, to make tools. And then the final, unbelievable leap, programming a machine with concepts like truth, justice, and morality. And number 12, a fear of death, which he defined as its work stopping. He was literally trying to engineer a soul.
But the story of John Norseen doesn't end with some triumphant new species of machine. It actually ends with a very sudden and very mysterious silence.
So get this. In early 2002, Norseen writes that everything's getting shut down for a new, super-secret program. But then shortly after that, his clearances are totally revoked. He's cut off from the very work that defined his entire life. And then not long after that, at just 53 years old, he dies of a sudden heart attack. His work, his theories, his prototypes, it all just vanished, back into the classified world.
And so we're left with this huge question. Norseen was working on this stuff over 2 decades ago. As all his research just disappeared behind this wall of secrecy, we have to wonder, in today's world of rapidly advancing neuroscience and AI, how much of his speculative science fiction has already become our scientific fact.